Hi, can I get a cup of coffee, please? Okay. If you've ever experienced this, you might be talking or thinking about the Gen Z stare. Now, this is what it's kind of referred to as now, but it's been around long before the Gen Z generation. And it's basically just people being rude, not interacting. Some people do it because they're not very happy or they're not in a good mood or what it might be in that situation that day. But there's a growing trend that people are attributing to the Generation Z in this kind of, monotone, not interactive, not engaging, not happy, not smiling. And it's common. I've been getting a lot of videos about this and people commenting on it like, have you ever experienced this? And like, so it's something that I was thinking about going, it's more common now because it's in places of service. So like the interaction that I just gave is probably something that you've you might have come across that. And the other thing is not all Gen Z are doing that, right? It might be a product of some of them. But like I said, this has been happening for a long period of time. It's just people being rude who are acting in a certain way they don't care about the other person in the conversation or in the interaction. And it's rude, especially because it's happening in more and more workplace situations. So in that instance that I started with is someone's going in to get a cup of coffee and the person working there is like basically dead. Like, why do I have to do this thing for you? It's like, because that's your job. There used to be something called service with a smile. That has gone away, but it's not Gen Z's fault. And this is my kind of whole point that I want to make behind this video is the reason why you see it more often now, I believe, is because we've lowered the standards. And if you lower people's standards, if you lower a bar, people are just going to limbo underneath them. If you don't tell someone, hey, when someone comes in, you interact and you say hello. And when they ask you for something, you say, yes, sir, no, sir, or yes, or no. You know what I mean? With the sir and the ma'am these days. You are engaging or else you're fired. Like these are standards that people used to have. Now they used to kind of be commonplace because you used to not be able to get a job if you weren't willing to do the job. And these little intangible things were looked at and they were scrutinized. And I think what's happened over time is we've lowered that bar for people. And what do? Again, you limbo underneath those things. You go, okay, here's the bar. I'm going to do a little bit less and see if I can get away with it. That's human nature. I hate my job. I hate where I'm at. And now I don't care that you know. So I'm going to act like this. No, I don't like I've had people go like, I don't know on the job, telling me something like, I don't like giving me an answer of, I don't know. And I'm going, I would never say that to someone unless if I had the next line, which is, I don't know, but I will get the person that does know, or I will find out for you. There was never a moment in any of my jobs that I would say, I don't know, and then just hot potato, hand it back to the consumer or the customer, and they had to deal with that. I don't know. I was responsible because that's my job. I'm working at a place. Even if I don't have any of the answers, I have a duty to whatever that I'm working because they pay me to help. It's what you're doing, especially in a job of service. And that's the biggest kicker is you're in a job of service. You're there to serve people. No matter what mood they come in as, no matter how they're interacting with you, you are getting paid to serve. So when we as customers come in and we're greeted with that sort of tone, lack of interaction, it is so annoying. And when it's happening commonplace, I can only really blame the employers, the people who are letting this stuff happen on a daily basis. And again, it's not necessarily these kids' fault because what have they gone through? they've gone through a big lowering of the bar. I mean, think about what happened during COVID. A lot of these kids that you're interacting with who are 20, 22, all right, 18, 19, what happened to them in their high school or junior high age? They went through the COVID pandemic where everything locked down. They couldn't go to school. They couldn't see their friends. Everything was on Zoom. The standards of teaching, if you thought your school had shitty standards, they lowered dramatically. They were just letting people graduate because they were like, well, what do we do in these situations? And instead of galvanizing the communities, getting people to work harder, the teachers did the same thing. They said, oh, here's the standard. It's lower now. I'm going to limbo underneath that too. So it's the whole community. We're all responsible for it, but you're seeing it more often now because I think it's just been a continuation of that lower standard. And then, so take my life, for example. My parents got divorced and they felt bad for me. They felt like they had robbed me of certain parts of my childhood. And so they felt bad. And so they would buy me things and they would do things for me in a way that wasn't really deserving because they just felt bad. They just felt guilty about what they put their kids through. And so they did things that maybe they wouldn't have necessarily done, or did things for me that they wouldn't have necessarily done if they were in a different situation. And, everyone acts in a specific situation differently depending on their influences, all these different things. So, certain things happen and you respond to them in a certain way, and we have to move on from those things. But I'm just pointing this out to you because, like my parents letting me get away with certain things, or when I would say, I don't want to do that, they wouldn't push too hard because they felt bad. The same thing is happening with these generations where schooling, oh, it's really tough. And they're not doing it because it's really tough, because they're trying to get away with things. Just like I would as a kid. I would try to get away with things. And if my parents let me get away with it, I'm going to try again, or I'm going to do that same behavior again. And what's happened over time is that behavior started to now, instead of just being in a high school classroom, it's now in the workplace. And someone like myself, who my personality, even if I wanted to do the Gen Z stare, even if I wanted to treat people bad, it's a compulsion for me to be in that kind of service with a smile mode. I have a trait called conscientiousness, which means I'm high in that trait, which means if you give me a task, I'm going to do that task 100% of my capability, sometimes even go above and beyond of what you expect, just because that makes me feel good. And I feel terrible if I don't do that. It's just part of my thing. So it's like, if you give me a task, I'm going to do it. And I'm going to do it full out. Now, getting me to do the task might be like pulling teeth, because I know it's going to take a lot for me to do that. But once I'm there, if you give me a job and you say, hey, this is what you have to do for work, I'm going to do that. Plus I'm going to help out. Plus I'm going to do it with a smile. Plus so that's me. I'm conscientious. Some people aren't like that at all. And I've come to accept that fact. I've understood that there are different personality types, and no matter how much training you do with someone, they're going to act in their default way most of the time. But again, if I hire people in a service business that aren't conscientious, that are not looking to help out customers, you're going to see more and more of this. And it's reminded me of I don't know if this is true or not, but it certainly it seems true given what I know about the company, but Southwest Airlines. And I've always had, when I've taken Southwest flights, I've always had a great experience. And a lot of that is due to the flight attendants and the people working on the planes. Well, what did Southwest do when they had a problem in their company? They were getting all these complaints, and they were getting all these complaints about, their people, the flight attendants and the servers and things. And they said, what are we going to do about these people? We need to get rid of them. And someone in their business was very smart. They said, before we get rid of them, let's find out what was so annoying about them, or what caused all of these complaints, so that we can fix that or stop that from happening next time. Well, what they found out was that these people, again, they didn't associate by other people. They were very into themselves. And that's what someone's doing when they're at work and they're going, I have to make you a coffee. Like, you're working at Starbucks. That's your job. That's the only one task that you have. Yes, I'm asking you to do that. And it's a weird interaction. Sometimes it gets into a weird interaction where people are like begging them to do their job. And it's like, it should never come to that. But again, they're not fit for that right situation. But if you limbo, if you lower the bar for people, people are going to do that. And like I said, you don't see this with every young person or every person. You see this with older people too as well. So anyways, it can happen with anyone. But at Southwest, they found out that these people were into themselves. They weren't associating to help out. They weren't thinking about other people. They were thinking about themselves. So what did they do for the future? They took that note. They did fire all those people, but what did they do for their future hires? They set up group interviews, and in the group interview, they would have people present. And what they did was they didn't really care so much about the presentation. What they cared about was, because it was in a group, how were you paying attention to the group? Because if there were 30 people, somebody's got to go first, somebody's got to go second, somebody's got to go fifth, somebody's got to go 30th. So what were you doing in that time between when your name got called and there was the other presentations and when you had to go up? What did you do? How did you interact? Were you looking off into the distance, thinking about what you were going to say, selfish, thinking about yourself? Or were you paying attention to other people's presentations because you were there and that's what you do because you're part of a presentation? So they noticed, and they would hire the people who were, and I don't know if this is the hiring practices now. Like I said, this is just a story, but it's an interesting thing to think about when you're thinking about associating and helping other people, service business, and being self or being into yourself, and how that works in the workplace. You don't always want people to be in a service business or in a associating by other if you have a certain situation that you need to be associated by self. Let's just say you have some situation where you need a lawyer who's going to protect you, and you're fighting against someone that might have a good point. They might have a good reason why they're upset with you. You want someone that's going to associate by you, not go, oh yeah, well, they're right anyway. So yeah, we concede, Your Honor. Yeah, we concede. Yeah. And you're sitting there going, wait a second, I hired you to help me out. You want someone that associates by self. So if you're someone that's watching this and you're going, yeah, I tend to do that when I work, I freaking hate it. Hey, think about what are some professions that you could do that really you need someone that's going to associate by self, that is more selfish, that's into themselves, that's thinking about how to protect, all right, my client's needs and wants and desires versus someone else's. Where in a service business, you need to make sure that the people who are coming in are serviced because that's what you do. And Southwest Airlines, from my experiences, I've always had a good interaction because they're very caring. They're asking you what you need and what this and what's that, and they're very personable. And those types of people tend to do well in service businesses. So the Gen Z stare thing, it's more common now, but I think a lot of that is because we've lowered the standards for people. We don't do as much we don't really care so much. And then also it's like people don't want to work. And so it's like, hey, this person at least shows up to the job. Maybe they're not the best person, but I got to have 5 people on staff today. And 3 of them, they just want a paycheck and they're doing the bare minimum, but even the bare minimum for them is like pulling teeth. So I don't know what situation has caused it more, but I think looking at the pandemic and looking at that kind of lowering the standard for kids to graduate and to do their daily tasks has now bled into our everyday life because they're now working. So it's an interesting dynamic. And what I would say is for me, I have to look at them and go, what a miserable way to live. I'm just so glad that I am not so consumed with myself, especially when I'm at work, that I can't interact with people because it doesn't make anyone's life. They think that they're doing themselves a service by acting like that because they're like, why should I, they have this kind of air about them that is like, well, why do I have to like go above and beyond? And it doesn't make anything better. It doesn't strengthen relationships. You don't meet better. Like nothing good comes out of that. So I look at that and I go, I don't get upset at it anymore. I just go, you know what? This is a miserable way for someone to live. And if that person ever wants a better way, I'm there to help, but I just know I would never hire them. And if I see that, if I'm hiring people, I would never. I would again understand that that's just sometimes how people are. If they're willing to learn and they're willing to fake it, right? Put a smile on, service with a smile. Hey, they're going to have a lot better interactions. You know what? Their job is going to actually be a lot easier. They've even shown that smiling, even if you don't want to smile, learning how to smile actually uplifts and boosts your mood. It's just like posture, right? If I sit and I slouch and I frown, I will start to feel the feelings associated with that. I will actually match my energy level with my posture. So if you are one of those people, again, maybe you want to find a different job. I would say definitely help us all out and find a different job. Find something that suits you better. But also, in any situation, you're not going to always be met with life giving you everything you want. And maybe that's what you're saying. Nothing in life gives me what I want. I highly doubt that nothing in life is going right for you. But if that is the case, fake it till you make it. Smiling is going to make your life better, even if your life is shit. So figuring out a way to be grateful for me has helped tremendously because I can get negative like the best of them. All right. Again, I have this trait conscientiousness that doesn't allow me in a service interaction to put my, what I'm feeling out there. I put the smile on automatically and I go and I do my job. But doesn't mean that I don't have this in there. In those other moments that I'm not in a service space, I can definitely be snarky and pissed off and doing all those things. So anyways, being grateful for me tremendously changes how I perceive things, and smiling and interacting with life on a better level at least puts that energy out there. So that's the topic I wanted to talk about today. I've seen a lot about that and just wanted to chime in on it. Anyways, until next time, I'll see you then.